So welcome to our panel conversation on food working without walls. So a lot of us are working without walls at the moment, and really learning what that means for us moving forward, what it means for us in the future, and some of the things that we can be doing to really enhance collaboration, trust, communication, that sort of thing is really what we're here to talk about today. And I'm really happy to be joined by three amazing people. So I'll just quickly introduce everybody. So I'm just I'm reading off profiles here, but I've got Stephen Farrugia, who has joined us from ShareTree today. Thank you so much for joining us, Stephen.
Oh, great to be here.
Stephen is an evolution hacker, entrepreneur and philanthropist, so it's very exciting to have him in the room. Business strategist and advisor, and Steve runs ShareTree, who is a group, I'm just sorry, who are, sorry. ShareTree have a cutting-edge approach to team culture that unifies, grows and inspires teams into states of sustainable higher performance. And they measure and validate organisation return on investment to ensure every dollar that we spend with ShareTree not only helps the community, but also helps performance within your business. So ShareTree provide a number of services and offerings to help with collaboration and optimization of culture and your workforce, and helps a very connected environment. He does a lot of work around gratitude and acknowledgement, which I absolutely love. One of the main things that's really drawn me to Stephen, but the breadth and the depth of what he brings is really exciting and empowering us. So thank you. Now I've also got Shanaka here. Hi Shanaka, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Just trying to jump into your profile. So Shanaka is the director of a small educational firm called UCAT Secrets. They focus on helping students build skill and character for a career in medicine. Throughout the lockdown period, UCAT Secrets has undergone a cultural transformation, allowing their team to stay connected despite working from home. And Shanaka has done some work with ShareTree tools and products as well. So, and I believe has had some fabulous outcomes with those. And then I've got Todd Pedler on the call as well. So hi Todd, thank you very much for joining us for this chat. Todd, I'm going to just jump into your LinkedIn profile here. So Todd is a creative professional. He spent 15 or more years in the business technology space, and he launched and is running a business called CentricMinds. And CentricMinds is a business who provide collaboration tools across intranets in large organizations. So really enable collaboration and communication within businesses, which is absolutely crucial to business culture and to, especially in the environment we're in now. So it's already really important. And I think, all of the things we're talking about today have been escalated and elevated in terms of the importance as we sort of set about trying to work out what this new remote teams world means to us as organizations and cultures and business leaders. So that's what we're here to talk about today. So thanks for joining us, everybody.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
Great to be here.
So, as I said, we've really been through, we're all going through a lot of change at the moment. And one of the big, it's almost like there's some shockwaves have gone through the market. And I've seen, I've likened it a little bit to the 7 stages of mourning. I've seen various iterations and waves going through the journey that leaders have gone on so far. And now we're sort of moving into the next phase of that, which is some are calling the new normal, some are calling the post-normal. But, effectively it's a new reality. And so, I would love to understand the sort of experience or the sort of feedback you guys have been having in the marketplace around where customers are at, where businesses have found challenges so far and where they're at now. So let's throw to Stephen for a response to that.
Yeah, it's been an interesting time. We've seen a number of different responses based on mindset of leadership and cultures of team. Even though all of the different industries and the different size organizations are going through the similar or same strains, we're seeing different responses based on those two things. So we did a 10-year study that looked at what are the key inputs to sustainable performance. And the main things that came out was mindset of leadership and culture of team. And they say there's three things that really just amplify what's within. One is money, the other is power, and the third one is strain. So right now we're seeing an environment of strain, which is really just exacerbating what was already there within certain leadership mindsets and cultures. Now, some of the cultures and mindsets that are purpose-driven and gratitude-centric, we're seeing them actually become higher engagement, higher performance, higher outcomes. And it can sound too good to be true for some of the organizations that don't have this practice earlier. Now, there is definitely a drop in revenue right across all the industries that we're seeing besides the primary needs. But those drops in revenue don't mean a drop in profitability is what we've been seeing. So it's been really interesting to see those different outcomes, and it's all driven by mindset and culture.
Yeah, right. Okay, that's really interesting. And the difference between revenue and profitability, and I suppose changing the way to fund our businesses as well, because we're less in the office and so on. Todd, what are your thoughts on that? What have you experienced?
Yeah, I think to Stephen's point, it's been, we've certainly seen the same. I mean, we work with organisations across all industry verticals, mostly in the medium to enterprise space. So 500 to 5,000 people is sort of our sweet spot of client concentration. And it looks affected everyone. Certainly, we have a lot of customers in industries like retail and hospitality, where it's been significant in terms of the impact. But it's also had a mixed reaction in other industries as well. Professional services, building and construction have done fairly well. I think for us, the key thing is, to Stephen's point, is those who have had an effective technology strategy have done better at communicating with their team when they're remote. So those who had to go from, within the first few weeks of the pandemic, rolling out their team to be in a remote stand-up arrangement with how they interact with everyone at the business. Those who had a more fully evolved, more sophisticated technology infrastructure in place have done fairly well in the way they've been able to handle that. Now, obviously, that doesn't go across all industries. I'm talking about mostly knowledge worker industries, professional services, those sorts of things. But we've certainly seen, to Stephen's point, impact on certain key industries, and has had a material impact on other industries. So, yeah.
Shanaka, what's been your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a small business owner, so it's a small team we've been working with. And I think one interesting perspective maybe I can provide is we're always going to be more agile to these types of changes in society. But perhaps larger businesses can look at the changes small businesses are going through and notice the things that are being done well and perhaps not so much. So for us, we've been pretty fortunate, I think. We had quite strong cultural practices in place before this really took place. And we were very mindful and present to the strains individual staff members may go through during this time. So one of the things that we really developed was unity and connection within each other. We almost sort of remodeled our entire company to have the purpose of serving each other's missions as individuals. So one of the things I personally found was it's really a time to empower people for the service they bring to an organization. And, you know, that's a real shift from what we used to see this organization as. We used to think it was all about the customers, and it still is about them. But our ability to serve those customers is a byproduct of the unity within our actual team. So I feel like that's the biggest change we went through, really unifying each other and the visions everyone has to be of value and service to something that's meaningful to them. So we found that our products have improved. Our revenue's gone down, but like Stephen was saying, that's not necessarily a problem. We're leaner now, and when we are able to kick things off, I'm really confident that we're going to not go back to normal, but really evolve into a new type of model that we can really excel through, bring more value out to other people, our customers, and support the individual growth of our team as well.
Yeah. I think it is very much about taking a step back, and sort of almost coming up to look at it from a bit of a bird's eye view and taking the opportunity to invest in the things that are now becoming important. And the challenge, I think, is for companies who are so focused on today, tomorrow, and the day after, that it's really challenging for them to sort of rise above and have a look at what's going on. A lot of people I've spoken to have said, they just don't feel like they've got the time for that. They're just almost in keep up mode with all of the changes that are happening and what they need to do. So it's interesting to understand what are your observations and your the conversations you're having with customers about this is where I say we're sort of moving into the next phase, I think, now, don't you think? Where people are now actually starting to say, okay, we need to take stock of this, and almost finding space to be able to look at what it is. And that's really interesting what you say, Shanaka, about the connection and the almost, well, I can't remember what you called it. Was it championing one another's cause almost internally in the business? And, there's been a lot of talk about how can you help people, how can you be valuable to people and support them while they're working from home. I think it's taking it to another level now. What do you think?
The term I like to use is you almost see people as entrepreneurs, where they're an entrepreneur within the business, and they have their own purpose that they're serving, their own vision that they have, that they're able to bring. Once you give them a little space, recognition, and support, they sort of come to life in their own way.
I'm just looking into the chat box, and one thing I should have said, so welcome to all the people who are coming on board now. Really great to have you here. I hope it was easy enough to find us. Please do throw your questions and comments into the chat box. We would love you to be part of this conversation as well. We'd love to answer as many things as we can for you, and get your input, because I think at the moment we're all, everybody's a little up in the air on this stuff. So the more input, the better, and the more valuable the conversation becomes. So I've got Yaja here is saying that unity within the team makes a massive difference to customer experiences, and keeping it up, putting out the spot fires. But then I think we've got to move on from the spot fires now. So what are your thoughts, Stephen, in terms of the next phase and some of the things people or businesses could be and are starting to do?
Yeah, well, there's a saying that austerity is the mother of innovation, meaning that the great strain helps us see things in different light and forces us to innovate when we would ordinarily lay complacent. And this is what we're seeing with this current time of transformation. And there are some things that we absolutely hate that we won't go back to. One of them would be complete isolation, and not going to parties and not socializing in the normal way, because we are hardwired. We are hardwired to connect to each other. Though technology can play a place in accelerating and optimizing those connections. Now, some of the positivities that are coming out of the new norm are these ways of connecting globally. And those that have embraced technology, to the like of the types of technologies that Todd provides in his organization, it allows us to connect. And when you connect those technologies with the social interaction that we're hardwired to be, together with AI, the types of technologies that are in Todd's software that help you connect to the people that are of aligned purpose, like Shanaka's talking about, this really supercharges our communication, it supercharges our connection, and ultimately supercharges our culture. Now, should we stay in locked boxes going forward? Absolutely not. Though I think the way forward will be a balance of what we found new that's empowering us, but holding on to the things that make us uniquely human. So it's an exciting time. I would say it's one of the most exciting times to ever have been alive, to see technology, to see how our phone is ringing, even though we're amidst a COVID crisis. So I'll get back to them. But it's a wonderful time to be alive, to be connected, to be embracing and integrating technology with the qualities of human life. I think there's some challenges yet to be faced about balancing what we're doing with industrialization together with being in harmony with our planet. I think there's a space there as well at the same time. But technology, again, will help us through that challenge if we embrace it and use it for good.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Stephen. A nice prop, by the way, that worked out really well. I'm glad we rehearsed that earlier with the phone. So I think to your point, just certainly in the context of what we do and what's happened to everyone, and I saw the comment just earlier, someone posted, we're yet to work out how we do return to what we refer to, or what I refer to as post-normal, because, we form habits over a repetitious cycle of 45 to 60 days. And for a lot of people, we've been in lockdown for a lot, that period. So we've already hardwired ourselves into thinking and doing and acting in a certain way. And we have to sort of unwire ourselves from what has been this stressful, traumatic process of being thrusted into an environment where, for some of us, we were working remotely, maybe 1 or 2 days a week, and then the rest of the time we're in the office. So we were going through, that push and pull cycle of being partly remote and then partly at the office. Certainly for our team, we've been a fully remote team for the last 18 months. So for us, uniquely, we went to a fully remote model before the pandemic happened. So for us, uniquely, we've watched and observed how others have dealt with that, knowing full well that as you get a bigger team and you scale up, it's going to be more difficult for a variety of reasons. But I think coming back to Stephen's point, being already hardwired, having a new way of working and living, to go back to what we had before, I don't think we're going to all be like an elastic band and go straight back to doing that. And I think for managers specifically, they're going to have to lean into that and understand how they're going to work with their own people in their own unique ways, no matter what they might be doing to accommodate and adjust for that. So,
yeah, it's interesting you say that you talk about the habits. And this is what I talk to people about all the time is, this is not going to be comfortable. This is not going to be easy. And if we're going to affect change in ourselves or in anything, we've got to know that, number one, we're going to feel a bit uncomfortable. And number two, people who we're dealing with are going to be feeling a little bit uncomfortable as well, because they're so used to you working a certain way or you being a certain way or behaving a certain way. So it comes in exactly the same thing when it comes to dealing with customers and, changing the way you do things as a business. Everyone's going to be a little bit uncomfortable, and the trick is to push through it. And the other thing that is really interesting that I've spoken to a couple of people about recently is that when you have crises like this in the world, so when there's been wars, civil wars, all sorts of things, the bubble normally afterwards, on average, apparently lasts about 6 months, as in the bubble of everybody's feeling like they want to change and they want to be better or they want to find new meaning in life. So some of the things that are going on for us all now, it's a bit like I say, a bit like a mourning experience. So it's within that 6-month bubble that I hope that we start to really create change, and we really drive action, and we change those habits. We've got 6 months, potentially to change those habits once things start to settle down. Does that make sense? And yeah, so looking now at longer term, how it needs to look or how it could look or how it could be different, I think is a really fantastic thing for leaders and everybody to be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Don't you think some of those things will stick forever? Because an example there is before COVID lockdowns and the embracing of technologies, and like what Todd was saying earlier, we've been already sort of at the fringe of embracing technology before this happened. And I used to make appointments with people to try and meet with them on Zoom. And the common response I had pre-COVID was, what is Zoom? That was the most common response from people. But now in COVID, I never get asked that question anymore. Everyone knows what Zoom is. So post the event, I think technology has helped some of these changes stick permanently.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I've got a client, for example, at the moment they're an engineering company, marine engineering, and they are so used to working in the office. You know, they still go and get the tape back up every week. You know, someone goes in and does the backup, and this has been quite a shift for them. And one of the people I'm coaching in there was so thrilled the other day that he had fixed it, so now nobody had to go and get the tape. So, you know, but the MD of that company is saying to me, I don't want to go back to where we were at. This is working incredibly well. No, you know, I never thought it could. And now I need to embrace that change. I need to work out. And obviously, you know, their tech is pretty clunky, so they've got a bit of a way to go. But he is, you know, his intention now is very different. Yeah. And so I think you're right. It will take, but again, it's just knowing that there's going to be discomfort along the journey. So how do you manage the discomfort and make sure that you keep your team focused and motivated to deal with the discomfort as well?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's always harder when you feel like you're enduring challenge alone. And this is why isolation, we're seeing the lagging effects now of it creating depression. And there's always a tail which leads, unfortunately, to suicide unless they embrace ways to prevent that.
Yeah.
It's the loneliness and the feeling of thinking you're enduring alone.
Yeah.
But it's not the reality. The reality is everyone is going through similar things, and we in fact can still be connected. And if you look at, you know, humans, we're wired to be connected and that sense of being valued. So the primary reason why people leave a workplace, I'm talking about skilled people here, professionals that are at the peak of their performance. The number one reason is to continue evolution. You know, they'll find a roadblock that will stifle their evolution, so they'll move on for growth. But the second greatest, and it's only by a margin, the second greatest reason why people leave a workplace is because they don't feel valued. And this links back to that sense of isolation, being seen, being heard, being supported. You know, the things that Shanaka is doing in his organization is being supported, being seen, being heard. This really creates connection. And there's no reason that if we're physically apart, by embracing technology, we can still remain connected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting dichotomy, isn't it, about the technology, you know, people talking about humans and, you know, it's a different type of connection now, and us talking about, you know, certainly my children and the way that they communicate, you know, it's entirely via technology. But embraced in the right way, it's an opportunity, and it really can help underpin connection. And, you know, there's still got to be a human element to that, obviously. And that's why, you know, I was really wanting to have this conversation today, because I absolutely love the two technologies that you guys are working with. And, you know, for me as a coach, it's more of a, I suppose, working with leaders one-on-one, you know, and with the teams to help with mindset and so on. What you do almost, like I say, sort of underpins all of that, and it's really, really important. So, and the value of gratitude and acknowledgement, Stephen, is phenomenal. And I think that's really a lot of what you're doing in your organisation, and using a tool that can help you with that. You know, this is where I think, firstly, it comes down to, you know, companies rising above and looking back at, you know, the conversation around purpose and the conversation around values, and then connecting that in with the technology as opposed to just the technology for the technology's sake. And then, you know, incorporating things like the gratitude and so forth. So, yeah. Well, in your experience, are you seeing that leaders are more open conversations now?
Certainly what we're seeing, absolutely. And that they've got, you know, they're in a position where they have to be, they're naked, they're vulnerable, because people are looking to them for answers to, you know, what's next. You know, how do we evolve? How do we come out of this? You know, how do we return to work? How do we create places of safety at work. You know, how do we deal with all those things as a team? Because for some of us, not all of us, you know, there will be a return to a physical place of work. I think, you know, Stephen made the point, you know, we are hardwired to be with other people. And I think, you know, that's naturally going to evolve to people wanting to be back working with each other. But so I think managers have had no excuse, or certainly can't hide behind technology. So that's forced people to have some dialogue and, you know, an open conversation with their entire team.
Yeah.
And I think that those who are doing well and have certainly emotional intelligence around how to manage a team through a crisis like this are the ones doing the best, because it just comes down to the simple case of communicating. So if for a team like us, we have a town hall meeting every Tuesday, everyone's on that call, and we just shoot the shit. So we'll talk about the weather in New Zealand. We'll just come together to talk as if we're all standing in the room together. And that's fundamental. And in providing, I guess, a culture of safety where everyone can raise anything they might want to raise that's affecting them personally, or they feel like they want to share with the entire team.
Yeah.
And we'll talk for 45 minutes about, you know, everything and anything. And I think that's a small thing you can do with your team if you're not doing it already. So forget email. It has to be as personal as it can be, which is going to be Zoom or a Teams meeting or a Slack meeting or whatever technology you might be using, to actually get everyone together and actually have a shoot the shit session, as I would call it, because that's fundamental in just hearing everyone out and reminding each other that, certainly for our team, most of our team is here in Melbourne, but we have team members around the country as well. But for them to see us and hear us talking about things that impact us, where, you know, they're out, they don't have lockdown, that's fundamental to the team dynamic as well. Everyone has to understand. For some of us, it's really difficult, and for others, they've got through it and they've had more success at a state level where they live. But it's fundamental that, I guess, as the manager, that I facilitate that as a platform so everyone can be heard and seen and understand what each team member is going through.
Yeah. I'm just going to come back to your question in a second, Liz. Thank you. I just, one thing that I have noticed in conversations with leaders is that there's a perception that if I'm on the phone or if I'm communicating, the over communication is a bit like micromanaging, you know, people, because they're not comfortable with just having these shoot the shit type conversations. You know, they feel like every time they talk to someone, it needs to be about something specific. And so I think just being open to connection, and because there's no kitchen conversations, and, you know, they used to call the water cooler conversation, and there's no lunch. Perhaps lunches is a good idea as well. So I know a lot of people are doing things like, let's just connect for lunch or coffee. You know, some are making that a prerequisite that, you know, once a week you've got to have lunch with one of your colleagues and do that on Zoom. But I'd be interested in your feedback on, you know, the difference between micromanaging and connection, and how important that is.
My experience, and then go to the other guys, is I used to be a micromanager, and some team members might argue I still am, but you know, I lived in the States 4 years ago for about 14 months, so I was 15,000 Ks away from the team on my own. So you don't directly pigeonhole me as a micromanager if I'm on the other side of the world and in a different time zone, where I heavily relied on everyone just knowing what they had to do, and if they needed help, to reach out to me, and we'd schedule a call and have a one-on-one, as you mentioned, Rebecca. So I've been through that. I forced myself into a situation where I had to adapt, and there's no ability to micromanage when you're put in that context. Mm-hmm. I think you made an excellent point. There are no water cooler moments happening in teams at the moment. I think having a shoot the shit session with your whole team, with the MD or CEO on the call, is a great way of allowing leaders to show, look, you know, I'm being completely open and transparent here. You can ask anything or request anything. That's a great way of actually creating trust within the team. And there's really, in my opinion, no other way to do it. If you want to hide behind the wall and you're not prepared to participate in a team discussion, then there's a significant problem with you as the leader. So I've always made myself completely transparent, and, you know, some people like that, some people don't like that. And I think you've got to deal with the personalities around how you manage that as well. So
Yeah. Thank you, Simon. Sorry, just noticing Simon's having to leave. Thanks, Simon, for joining us. Enjoy your day. Stephen, what's your take on that? The difference between micromanaging and connecting. You're muted. Oh, you're muted.
We've got a model of leadership at ShareTree that we help, and it's a hybrid of situational leadership together with conscious competence cycle. So when a person is evolving and learning, and every context and every project and every person creates a unique event. So at the first stage, there's a beautiful state which is called unconscious incompetence, that you just don't know that you don't know. It's a ignorance is bliss state. It's a lovely place to be. And then some bastard will tell you what you don't know, which is the conscious incompetence stage. It's like, oh, now I have to make a choice. Do I want to build the competency, and do I want to build the character strength to master this process and to master this project? And then if I choose to move forward from there, I've got to go over what's called the hurdle stage, where I need to put in effort and develop myself. That next stage is then conscious competence, where I'm drilling myself, where I'm working. If you think back to when you first learned how to drive a car, that was the stage where you had to think about putting on the indicator. You had to think about changing the gears if you drive a manual. Not many do these days. You have to think about where you're going. So all these things are running through your head. And then the last stage, the stage of mastery, is unconscious competence. You can just do it. And most people drive now, they don't even remember what they did to get there. Or riding a bike, you did the same thing when you learned how to walk. None of you have to remember now to balance yourself. It just all happens. Yeah. Now, the leadership that is advanced in its approach can cater to that person on that journey. So in the first stage, unconscious incompetence is to inform, to help bring to their awareness what they don't know in an inspirational way, not a directive way. And then from there, they move into the conscious incompetence. So there it's the teaching phase. And this, sometimes a bit of micromanagement is needed in that phase. And once they start putting into practice, then our role should change into coaching and supporting. And then the last phase is delegating. Yeah. So if you delegate to someone that's in conscious incompetence, they're doomed to fail. And that's not a great approach. But if you micromanage and coach someone that's fully unconsciously competent, now you're micromanaging and you're stifling one's creativity and flow. So it's really contextual based, person based, project based. And this is what we help leaders understand. When do I use what approach, and how do I build my own leadership flexibility to make sure I'm inspiring that person all the way through the journey? Yeah,
yeah. And the shift, and that's a challenge in itself, right? That a leader needs to be comfortable with. And now add on the new layer of, well, people are working from home and people are, in different places. So firstly, how do I have time to have all those conversations with the right people, and how do I make sure it's the right conversation with the right people? And this is why I think that that's one element. And then the other is how important it is to have these town halls so that everybody can just, let's just relax and hang out and chat about stuff, let's connect, rather than let's try and achieve or solve something on this call. And then having structured one-on-ones with everybody, where you can connect with them in terms of what part of that learning journey they're on, and whether it is
and asking questions, Rebecca, like that's the number one teaching in what we do, is help leaders understand to ask more questions, to check in, to create a psychological safe environment, like Todd mentioned, where people can voice their vulnerabilities without feeling judged, and to ask questions to people understand where they are in their own journey. That's the role of the leader, is to help other people navigate their own course.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so important.
Also, leaders can be just great. They need to refine their skill of being a great listener as well, just listening. And part of the meetings I have is to say nothing and let the others speak. And, there's a natural progression of dialogue that will help, tease out things that are really on people's mind versus, well, I'm the leader, this is the agenda, we're going to do this, this, and this today, and we've got 45 minutes to do it. That's it. Forget that strategy. And you might be using that strategy because that's what you're most familiar with, but using incredulous listening to allow the team just to speak I find it a great way of allowing people to tease out what are the things that are really on their mind.
Yeah, wonderful. And that's a really good way to innovate, to add value to innovation as well when you're having those conversations. Yeah, this is such a great conversation. How have we gone? How much more time have we got? We've still got 20 minutes. It's great. And I'm just going to scroll back to one of Liz's questions. So there was a question about, can we share some, there's so many good comments in here. What can managers do now to prepare for the recovery with their teams? Are there any specific tips and ideas we can share? Who wants to answer that? Shanaka.
I think, sorry, Shanaka, you have a go, please.
Okay, cool. Yeah, one of the perspectives I have, there's an amazing book from Simon Sinek that I love for this particular type of question. It's called Leaders Eat Last. And I think the mindset of a leader and a manager is the fundamental first pillar of being able to prepare for recovery, as Liz has asked there. And the idea that leaders eat last is really sort of flipping the hierarchy almost and saying, actually, it's not about me, it's about them. And so I feel like to go through those stages of competency that Stephen explained, it requires the leader to first sort of step out of their own mind, their own story that they're in, and to really listen and understand the perspective of their team member or whoever it is that they're trying to help develop a new ability or perform a new task. To be able to do that requires a certain mindset shift. I've been through cycles of my own evolution, being a really heavy micromanager and sort of seeing things as everything having to happen my way. And then I obviously ran into a lot of friction that way, because my way is not their way and they're not going to be able to do my way. So over time, I've sort of realized that to really get the best outcomes, it's about empowering other people to do it their way. And they have to go through their own learning cycles for that. And my role is simply to help facilitate that journey for them. It's not even really that I do anything. I almost just create the space for them to go through that journey whilst feeling supported and valued, encouraging them when they need it. Sometimes there's a bit of prodding, sometimes there can be what may look like sternness, but it's always done with good intent. And I think it comes through that mindset shift that a leader has to first go through, and then they're able to bring out the best in everyone. So that's sort of my opinion.
One of the themes that I'm seeing across all of this is awareness as well. And, I just want to thank you for being so open and kind of vulnerable almost on this call, and, sharing that you've had learning experiences and how, that has impacted you and your growth as leaders. So that's fantastic. But I think awareness is the number one, right? Because if you don't have awareness, you can be, there are many leaders I have met, Stephen, who are unconsciously incompetent. And, they've got, a lot of them have fairly large egos as well. So it's very hard to sort of make that shift, and without being rude, it is what it is. And it's just being able to take that step back and have awareness. So, the first step on any journey is there. And for me, the step beyond that is to then look at the purpose and the values. I think, looking at that big picture stuff is really crucial before you just jump into the nitty gritty of, okay, so how are we going to communicate? How are we going to connect? What are the texts? You got to do that preparation work in order to know that you're going to go down the right path. And then you know what conversations you need to start having. But I think also being open to learning from other organisations and learning from the experience of others in terms of what's worked for them and what hasn't, and then being able to mould that to you and your business and your team is really important as well. So so in terms of next steps, Stephen, what are your thoughts? What are some of the things that leaders can be doing now to prepare for the next phase?
Yeah, there's nothing really stopping a team starting the journey, reinforcing the journey, now. It comes down to those 3 C's that we mentioned earlier about good communication, about good connection, and creating a culture that sustains and perpetuates itself. And some of the things that they can do is really calling out the character strengths that they see in each other every day. When you name the academic performance, we've seen this in all the primary schools that we've worked with and some of the sports clubs. If you call out the academic outcome or the sports performance outcome, then what you do is you actually set a bar towards something that can be lost. But when you call out the character strength that one has embraced to achieve that result, that's not something you can take away from someone. And what they do is they mimic it for themselves, and others mirror it to replicate it again and go beyond. So it's really simple. It's as small as 5 minutes a day for calling out the character strength that you see in someone authentically within your team. And you work your way through the team. Like my daughter is a spirit warrior. Yeah, she's one of the most toughest people that I've ever seen. And one could call that stubbornness, but I see it as determination. Yeah, and there's a subtle difference between the two. One calls them to character, and one shames them for the act that they do. And when we call a person to character, and we're just big kids, guys, we are big kids. All that happens is you have more bullshit filters that go up as you grow. And if you cut through all of that, at the core of us is purpose and character. There's nothing else at the core of us. And the ego is just outside trying to protect our fragile self. But if you put all that stripped aside, express the character strengths we see in others every day, and create, as Todd mentioned, psychological safe spaces. You know, if I tell you something vulnerable about me and I see there's no judgment, the next time I'm going to tell you a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. And before you know it, you've got people that are working together like families. And this is the feedback we have from people that use ShareTree technologies to cultivate connected cultures. They say it's more like a family. Yeah, there's a deep sense of trust between people, a deep sense of connection. And that can come with heightened emotions, but it's not to move away from that. When you are expressing your emotions, it means that you have a relationship of trust. Have a look at those that you fight with most. They will often be those that are closest to you because you've created a safe space to express yourself.
I love that you use the word trust. Trust is just, for me, the absolute foundation to everything in and success in business. Without trust, it's so hard to build on top and create anything else. And I love what you're saying about being very specific around the characters traits as well. So I think, and one thing I love is every time I email you or something, you know, we have a certain type of exchange, you'll compliment me for a specific characters trait, and you'll explain to me what you mean by that. And I absolutely love that. And I think, you know, the being really clear in communication is another really powerful thing. And so what you're talking about doing here to prepare for the next phase is almost sort of priming, kind of opening up, allowing people to embrace and be themselves and feel comfortable and connected, so that they're ready for that next part of the journey. And it kind of almost it'll be easier to make that change.
It starts with the leader. The team will emulate the way you lead.
Yeah,
I've seen it with the science that there's a 5 times impact. We've had culture trees up, and we've specifically asked leaders on thriving culture trees where people are all exchanging character strengths with each other. And we say to the leaders, we want you to stop acknowledging people without telling anyone. We want to see what happens. And we watch the trees go to sleep within 2 months. Right. And then we say, okay, we don't want you to tell anyone, but acknowledge one person every 2 days. And we want to see what happens. They start that practice, and within a month, the tree comes back to life again. So leaders need to take responsibility and accountability, something that Liz mentioned earlier, to empathize with people, but to take accountability to create the cultures that you aspire to.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely brilliant. I'm glad we're recording this. And I just wanted to thank Derek. Derek's been putting some fabulous comments in the comment box, and I absolutely love a lot of the things you're saying there. Trustworthiness, known by both science and philosophers as a foundation of all effective organisations, similar to creating a safe space, open space technology, and Indigenous understanding of the power of the circle. That's beautiful. I love that. Yeah, thank you for
In
sharing.
fact, what Derek's pointing out there is we are relearning how to be a tribe again.
Well, yeah. That's a really good point. Has anybody has anybody got any other questions in the chat box? So
I think I saw one before. Do you think this pandemic will have an effect on company values? Do you think they'll have to adjust them going forwards? We actually did an exercise a few weeks ago where we revisited our company purpose, vision, mission, and values, because we felt like through this time, every individual had evolved in a way, right? Through the strain, things had changed. So we revisited the exercise that, you know, is the foundation of how everything runs. And we found it had fundamentally changed. The sense of purpose had really transformed itself into a much more purposeful sort of vision that we felt much more aligned to. And we realized it was because we had gotten closer as a unit. We realized that because we've been acknowledging each other, reaching out, extending our own vulnerability, and sort of really creating a certain type of culture through this time, our connection had allowed us to unite our individual visions to a more unified purpose. Mm-hmm. So my opinion is that absolutely, I think company values should change because people have evolved through this time. It hasn't really been a stagnation period. You know, strain doesn't stagnate people. It forces evolution to take place. And we need to embrace that and talk about that so we can see the evolution each person has gone through and bring that together through the values that a company embodies. So that's been sort of my experience with it.
Yeah, I like that. From my perspective, in terms of, like I was saying about the morning experience, a lot of the time change in values occurs when we go through a major life experience, you know, traumatic experience, something that really sort of hits us hard. And we're all going through that right now together. I've likened it to, it's like we're all going through a near-death experience all at the same time. So we can't not change. Like, values will change, they have to change. And I think in order to do business in this world moving forward, you're going to need to change your values. So because other companies are going to be changing theirs, and people are going to be not so much changing, but expanding and, you know, sort of developing into what's truly important to them. And in order to be ahead of the game, or in order to remain relevant, you've got to be on that journey too. So, you know, for me, definitely, I was fairly clear on my business values and my own personal values. And, you know, there's been a bit of shift in that when I stop and look at that and reflect on it now. And yeah, I think that's really important in answer to the question that companies do stop and think about this now, even if they had something in place and it was working well. Is to really just consider and take stock and decide what it needs to look like for the future. Yeah, for many reasons.
There's distinctly a difference between aspirational values. We do a lot of work in that space. So we work with organizations, and when we first come in, they've got a set of values that are up on the wall. And there's a few key things that we see with values. The culture of a team is really the collective character of its people. And once we start measuring the exchange of people calling out the character strengths between each other, you see the living culture real. And often that's a shock for organizations that have had these words up on the wall for many years. Now you've got two choices. You can actually start leading your culture to genuinely inspire those values in real life so that they are living and real. Or you can shift your values to the unique character strengths of your team culture. And they're two different pathways there. The other challenge that we see is that multinationals prescribe these set of values to the organization. But in the reality, you've got lots of subcultures that are working within teams that are all on their own evolution cycle. Some might be at startup phase, some might be mature, some might be institutionalized departments. So there's all these different cultures which have their own collective of people to form their own culture, and it doesn't allow them to be unique. And if it doesn't allow a sense of uniqueness, then you lose the authenticity of connection. So when we help people create cultures, it's 3 primaries that are linked to the purpose of the organization that unify them all. But then there's 4 complementary values or character traits that are unique to the subculture.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And that just kind of wraps around something that I've always said to people, because I've been in the careers space for so long. People come to me and say, what's the culture of this company like? And I've always said, which team are you going to be working in? Always just been my response. You can't ask me to tell you the culture of IBM, because it's just, it's a monolithic, huge, and it's not possible for the culture to be consistent through the entire business in that. So it's so important that as leaders, you set and create a culture for your team. It doesn't necessarily have to be for your entire business. So yeah, that's fantastic. Now, where we go?
Have you seen similar things, Todd, with your work in the multinational space?
Yeah, and to all those points, I agree wholeheartedly. I think for leaders, though, themselves, if you haven't made effort to engage your team in a transparent fashion now, it's not too late. For a lot of us, we're still coming towards the end of this, and we're still living the days and the lives we have been for the last 3 to 6 months. It's not too late to make change now. But in the post-normal, after all this is done, there's going to be massive disruption in work. People are going to make change because they'll be judged. They'll decide they're going to go and look for what matters to them, that the ecosystem or the DNA of the organisation they currently work with is not facilitating or not providing, because those leaders have had 6 months to do something about it and they failed. So you're going to see mass work disruption in people jumping across jobs to find what is going to be suitable for them and their families and their way of living and their way of working in the post-normal.
Yeah, which is a huge opportunity for organisations to embrace. Because so you need to work out what it is that's attractive, what it is, who it is that you want to bring into your organisation as well, because it's an opportunity for that as much as it is for people to go and find the right environment. So a few months back, I felt very guilty when I was saying, let's embrace the opportunity. Let's look at what we can get out of this, not what we can't. And just the optimism around it. You kind of felt a little unsure as to whether you should be openly optimistic. But, it is something to be optimistic about. I think that, yes, it's been shit for a lot of people, and it's really hard, and it's impacting so many people on so many levels in so many businesses. And we can be positive, though. We can look at the opportunity, because there's going to be huge opportunity, and it's those of us that embrace that, I think, that are going to have almost a better life or in a better business moving forward. Even if we're at rock bottom, let's embrace what the next phase is and the opportunity. It's exciting. Yeah. So, right, we're coming towards the end of our time. This has been such a fabulous conversation. Thank you so much for joining me to have it. I think we've lost a few people to time. Anyone like to sort of add anything to wrap up?
One thing I'd like to say is I feel like gratitude is a simple practice that everyone can build as an individual. A very simple way of developing your own character, which makes it easier to have these types of conversations that Todd's talking about and Stephen's mentioning and Rebecca, you're mentioning as well. I found it very difficult several years ago to connect with my team and my friends and my family authentically. I felt like I was in my own little bubble, and gently over time, slowly, as I found my own gratitude for the things that people are doing for me, the journey everyone is on, I realized that my bubble has started to extend itself outwards. I'm able to have meaningful conversations with my team that I wouldn't have even imagined was possible, a few years ago. And to that nature, it's really become a family now. It's totally a family. We refer to each other as brothers and sisters. And I think that comes through everyone really starting to feel grateful in their own way for who they are and who the people in their lives are. So that's something I've been doing daily now, just in my own way, spending 5 minutes appreciating people. Sometimes it's just me telling myself, but sometimes it's letting them know. And I've found it's made a huge difference over the last 6-7 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very fitting. Yeah. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, to that point, I mean, in previous town halls with the team is just reminding people to be grateful for what we have, despite it being a shit time that has, tested a lot of us in varying ways, but just to be thankful and grateful for what we actually have. And, the excitement of when this is all over, what we can run towards and achieve together.
Yeah.
But just reminding people to be grateful and thankful for what you have. Despite what's going on.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's fantastic. And thank you to Maria and to Derek. The full agreement on the gratitude conversation. And I am so grateful that we have had this conversation today. I really, want to share gratitude with everybody who's joined us and you guys for an hour of your time to have this chat. I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, it's a Global Gratitude Day today. Ironic.
Is it?
Yes.
We picked the day accidentally, but it's actually Global Gratitude Day today. There's a number of different events we need to speak at following this. So, it's a simple practice, but like anything that's sustainable, you can't notice its growth. Like if you look at a tree from day to day, you don't see it growing. But if you look at a tree post a year, you'll see its roots have broadened, its branches have extended, and it's flourishing with leaves and fruit or whatever. It depends if it's deciduous or not. But every year you will expand, and gratitude's no different. It's a small micro change, and the newer generations are not so attuned to this. They like, press button world, instant gratification. But over time it grows. So thanks, Rebecca, for hosting such a...
Yes, thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry about the glitches at the beginning. And to anyone who is not connected to anyone here, please do reach out on LinkedIn. But I will also send up a follow-up email with contact details for everybody so that we can all make sure we're all connected moving forward. Wonderful.
Great.
Thank you so much. Have a fabulous day filled with gratitude and love.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks
Thank you.
Thanks for your time. Thank you.